Section 42 of the Fables of Pilpay. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. The Fables of Pilpay by Anonymous, translated by Abdullah Ibn al-Muqaffa and Joseph Harris. Chapter 4. How we ought to make choice friends, and what advantage may be reaped from their conversation. You have now told me, said the king, to my infinite satisfaction, the story of a knave who, under the false appearance of friendship, occasioned the death of an innocent person. I desire you next to inform me what benefit may be made of honest men and real friends in civil life. Your Majesty, answered the Brahmin, is to know that honest men esteem and value nothing so much in this world as a real friend. Such a one is as it were another self, to whom we impart our most secret thoughts, who partakes of our joy, and comforts us in our affliction. Add to this, that his company is an everlasting pleasure to us. But nothing can, perhaps, give your Majesty a clearer or nobler idea of the pleasures of a reciprocal friendship than the following fable. Fable 1. The Raven, the Rat, and the Pigeons. Near adjoining to Adorna there was once a most delightful place, which was extremely full of wild fowl, and was therefore much frequented by the sportsmen and fowlers. A raven one day accidentally espied in this place, at the foot of a tree, on the top of which she had built her nest, a certain fowler with a net in his hand. The poor raven was afraid at first, imagining it was herself that the fowler aimed at, but her fear ceased when she observed the motions of the person, who, after he had spread his net upon the ground, and scattered some corn about it to allure the birds, went and hid himself behind a hedge, where he was no sooner laid down, but a flock of pigeons threw themselves upon the corn, without hearkening to their chieftain, who would fain have hindered them, telling them that they were not so rashly to abandon themselves to their passions. This prudent leader, who was an old pigeon, called Mantivagga, perceiving them so obstinate, had many times a desire to separate himself from them, but fate, that imperiously controls all living creatures, constrained him to follow the fortune of the rest, so that he alighted upon the ground with his companions. It was not long after this before they all saw themselves under the net, and just ready to fall into the fowler's hands. Well, said Mantivagga on this, mournfully to them, what think you now? Will you believe me another time, if it be possible that you may get away from this destruction? I see, continued he, perceiving how they fluttered to get loose, that every one of you minds his own safety only, never regarding what becomes of his companions. And, let me tell you, that this is not only an ungrateful but a foolish way of acting. We ought to make it our business to help one another, and it may be so charitable an action may save us all. Let us all together strive to break the net. On this they all obeyed Mantivagga, and so well bestirred themselves that they tore up the net from the ground, and carried it up with them into the air. The fowler, on this, vexed to lose so fair a prey, followed the pigeons, in hopes that the weight of the net would tire them. In the meantime the raven, observing all this, said to herself, This is a very pleasant adventure, I am resolved to see the issue of it. And accordingly she took wing and followed them. Mantivagga, observing that the fowler was resolved to pursue them, This man, said he to his companions, will never give over pursuing us till he has lost sight of us. Therefore, to prevent our destruction, let us bend our flight to some thick wood or some ruined castle, to the end that, when we are protected by some forest or thick wall, despair may force him to retire. This expedient had the desired success, for, having secured themselves among the boughs of a thick forest, where the fowler lost sight of them, he returned home, full sorely afflicted for the loss of his game and his net to boot. As for the raven, she followed them still, out of curiosity to know how they got out of the net, that she might make use of the same secret upon the like occasion. The pigeons, thus quit of the fowler, were overjoyed. However, they were still troubled with the entanglements of the net, which they could not get rid of. But Mantivagga, who was fertile with inventions, soon found a way for that. We must address ourselves, said he, to some intimate friend, who, setting aside all treacherous and by-ends, will go faithfully to work for our deliverance. I know a rat, continued he, that lives not far from hence, a faithful friend of mine, whose name is Zirac. He, I know, will gnaw the net and set us at liberty. The pigeons, who desired nothing more, all entreated to fly to this friend, and soon after they arrived at the rat's hole, who came forth upon the fluttering of their wings, and, astonished and surprised to see Mantivagga so entangled in the net, Oh, my dear friend, said he, How came you in this condition? To whom Montevagga replied, I desire you, my most faithful friend, first of all to disengage my companions. But Zirac, more troubled to see his friend bound than for all the rest, would needs pay his respect to him first. But Montevagga cried out, I conjure you once more, by our sacred friendship, to set my companions at liberty before me, for that besides being their chieftain, I ought to take care of them in the first place. I am afraid the pains thou wilt take to unbind me will slacken thy good offices to the rest, whereas the friendship thou hast for me will excite thee to hasten their deliverance, that thou mayest be sooner in a condition to give me my freedom. The rat, admiring the solidity of these arguments, applauded Montevagga's generosity, and fell to unloosening the strangers, which was soon done, and then he performed the same kind office for his friend. Montevagga, thus at liberty, together with his companions, took his leave of Zirac, returning him 1,000 thanks for his kindness. And when they were gone, the rat returned to his hole. The raven, having observed all this, had a great desire to be acquainted with Zirac, to which end he went to his hole and called him by his name. Zirac, frightened to hear a strange voice, asked who it was, to which the raven answered, It is a raven who has some business of importance to impart to thee. What business, replied the rat, can you and I have together? We are enemies. Then the raven told him he desired to list himself in the number of a rat's acquaintance whom he knew to be so sincere a friend. I beseech you, answered Zirac, find out some other creature whose friendship agrees better with your disposition. You lose your time in endeavoring to persuade me to such an incompatible reconciliation. Never stand upon incompatibilities, said the raven, but do a generous action by affording an innocent person your friendship and acquaintance when he desires it at your hands. You may talk to me of generosity till your lungs ache, replied Zirac. I know your tricks too well. In a word, we are creatures of so different species that we can never be either friends or acquaintance. The example which I remember of the partridge, that over-hastily granted her friendship to a falcon, is a sufficient warning to make me wiser. End of section 42.